Hey, welcome to Bask in the Story. My name is Matt, and today we'll be looking at the 5 best current science fiction and fantasy writers according to the 3 major writing awards. So this is not my opinion, this is fact. Well, I suppose it's the opinion of many people, which is the same as fact? Is that how the wisdom of crowds work? No? You mean it's not if most people think that's the way it is, that's the way it is? No. Okay, well, before we get stuck into some metaphysical quandary from which we will never recover, let's get on with these 5 top authors. So, how did I work this out? So I looked at the 3 major writing awards, the Hugos, the Nebulas, and the Locus Awards, which has 2. It has a separate science fiction and fantasy award, so it's 4 awards in total for the last 5 years, and I looked at who the winners were and who all the nominations as well, and I got a list of approximately 80 authors in total for the last 5 years. For each of these awards, we're just looking at the novel category alone, no novellas or anything else, just purely the novel category. If an author won that category, they received 3 points. If they were nominated but didn't win, I gave them 1 point. Simple, easy to do. I then calculated the points for the last 5 years, and the one with the highest points is the winner. And if there's any ties on points, then it's the author with the most wins takes the higher place. If there's equal on wins as well, then they're tied in that position. So simple, easy to work out, and here are the list of 5. Before we get to it, have a guess. Who do you think would be in the top 5 best science fiction and fantasy authors for the past 5 years? Pause the video and put in the comments below who you think the top 5 authors are, and we'll see if you're right at the end. So in 5th place, we actually have a tie. So we have 2 authors equal on 6 points with 1 win each and a further 3 nominations. So firstly, we will look at Naomi Novik. So Naomi Novik's Spinning Silver won the Locus Award in 2019 and was nominated for a Nebula and Hugo. And in 2022, her book The Last Graduate was nominated for a Locus Award. So we'll start with Spinning Silver, which is a standalone in which Miriam descends from a line of moneylenders, but her father's inability to collect his debts has left his family on the edge of poverty. Hardening her heart, she sets out to claim what is owed and soon gains a reputation for being able to turn silver into gold. When an ill-advised boast draws the attention of the King of Starik, grim fey creatures who seem more ice than flesh, Miriam's fate and that of 2 kingdoms will be forever altered. Set an impossible challenge by the nameless king, Miriam unwittingly spins a web that draws in a peasant girl, Wanda, and the unhappy daughter of a local lord who plots to wed his child to the dashing young Tsar. But Tsar Minatius is not what he seems, and the secret he hides threatens to consume the lands of humans and Starik alike. Torn between deadly choices, Miriam and her 2 unlikely allies embark on a desperate quest that will take them to the limits of sacrifice, power, and love. So as I say, this is a standalone by Naomi Novik, and as we get through this, you'll see this is quite unusual for a standalone to appear in this list from an author, so it's quite a unique book and well worth looking at. The next book that got nominated for a Locus Award, but unfortunately didn't win, was called The Last Graduate, which is the 2nd book in a Scholomance trilogy. So to avoid spoilers, I'm going to look at the synopsis for the first book, which is called A Deadly Education. Scholomance is a school for the magically gifted, where failure means certain death, until one girl, Elle, begins to unlock its many secrets. There are no teachers, no holidays, and no friendships, save strategic ones. Survival is more important than any letter grade, for the school won't allow its students to leave until they graduate, or die. The rules are deceptively simple. Don't walk the halls alone, and beware of the monsters who lurk everywhere. Elle is uniquely prepared for the school's dangers. She may be without allies, but she possesses a dark power, strong enough to level mountains and wipe out millions. It would be easy enough for Elle to defeat the monsters that prowl the school. The problem? Her powerful dark magic might also kill all the other students. So that's the 2 books. Now Naomi Novik's latest release is the 3rd book in that trilogy called The Golden Enclaves, which came out last year. And as far as I'm aware, there's no scheduled releases further for her, but obviously you could check out that trilogy if you so wish. In joint 5th place with Naomi Novik is Fonda Lee. So she also has 1 win and 3 nominations. And all of these are for her 3 books in the Greenbone Saga trilogy. So you got Jade City in 2018, which was nominated for a Nebula and Locus Award. Jade War in 2020, which was also nominated for a Locus Award. And Jade Legacy, which in 2022 finally won the Locus Award. So I say all these 3 books make up the Greenbone Saga trilogy, which, as you can tell by the fact that all of them were nominated for awards, is very highly regarded. And if you lurk in the same areas of booktube as I do, it is very, very popular. This series has been described as the Godfather with magic and kung fu. Intrigued? The first book in this trilogy follows the Call family, one of 2 crime syndicates on the island of Kikon. This island is the only place in the world where magical jade can be found, which can give those with the right training and heritage superhuman abilities. The Greenbone clans used these superhuman powers to protect the island from foreign invaders, but now the island is a bustling post-war metropolis, with the Greenbone families, like the Calls, running the districts under their protection. As tension builds between these crime families, violence breaks out on the streets and a clan war ensues, the outcome of which will determine the fate of all Greenbones and the future of Kikon. So Fonda already has a prequel out to this called the Jade Setter of Janloon. Yes, the Jade Setter of Janloon. And shortly there will be a collection of 4 short stories coming out in July called the Jade Shards. But if you can't wait for that and you fancy something different, she has just released a book called Untethered Sky, which is completely separate. This is a fantasy fable in which main character's family is torn apart when a manticore kills her mother and baby brother. She is left with only her father's painful silence and an overwhelming desire for revenge on the monsters that destroyed her family. So, if you read the Greenbone Saga or you fancied picking up a taster of what Fonda Lee can produce, then maybe try The Untethered Sky. So that was our 5th place authors. In 4th place, we have Martha Wells, who swept the board in 2021 with her book Network Effect, where she won the Hugo, the Nebula and the Locus Award. The Network Effect is actually book 5 of her Murderbot series. So rather than reading the synopsis of that and giving spoilers for the beginning, we'll look at the first book in that series, which is All Systems Red. As a heartless killing machine, I was a complete failure. In a corporate-dominated spacefaring future, planetary missions must be approved and supplied by the company. For their own safety, exploratory teams are accompanied by company-supplied security androids. But in a society where contracts are awarded to the lowest bidder, safety isn't a primary concern. On a distant planet, a team of scientists is conducting surface tests, shadowed by their company-supplied droid, a self-aware sec unit that has hacked its own governor module and refers to itself, though never out loud, as Murderbot. Scornful of humans, all Murderbot wants is to be left alone long enough to figure out who it is. But when a neighbouring mission goes dark, it's up to the scientists and Murderbot to get to the truth. So Martha Wells is bringing up the 7th instalment of the Murderbot series, and I think it's scheduled to be released in November, maybe the 14th of November, and it's called System Collapse. But if you want to try something completely different from Martha Wells, she has stepped back into her fantasy, or is just about to step back into her fantasy after almost a decade, I think, of not writing fantasy, with a book called Witch King, which comes out the end of May the 30th, I believe. This is about or should that be the Demon Kai, who, after being murdered and having had his consciousness lie dormant in a water trap, he wakes to find a lesser mage attempting to harness his magic. This was never going to go well, but Kai has questions to answer. Why has he been imprisoned? What has changed in the world since his death? And why is the Rising World Coalition growing in influence? So if you fancy something different, fantasy rather than sci-fi from Martha Wells, check out her new release, Witch King. So we also have a tie for 2nd place. So first we'll go to Mary Robinette Kowal, who has 3 wins and 2 further nominations. So in 2019, she swept the board with the first book in her Lady Astronaut series called The Calculating Stars, which won the Hugo, the Nebula and the Locus Award. And then in 2021, her 3rd book of that series was nominated for both a Hugo and a Nebula Award. That was called The Relentless Moon. Her 2nd book in that series is The Fated Sky. The Lady Astronaut universe is an alternate history which kicks off in 1952 when a huge meteorite obliterates much of the east coast of the United States, including Washington, D.C. Unsurprisingly, this is having a cataclysmic effect on the Earth's climate, and the planet will become inhospitable to human life. This drives humanity to accelerate its efforts to colonize space for the survival of the species. Elmer York is hired as a calculator by the International Aerospace Coalition to help put a man on the moon. As Elmer sees so many skilled and experienced women pilots and scientists, including herself, she wonders why it has to be a man. Elmer's drive to become the first lady astronaut is so strong that even the most dearly held conventions of society may not stand a chance against her. Mary Robinette Kowal's next release is actually the fourth book in the series, called The Martian Contingency, which is due out next year in 2024. I don't think there's anything else due out prior to that, but that will be out in 2024. So if you want to catch up on the first three, you can get started with the knowledge that book 4 comes out next year. So tied with Mary Robinette Kowal is Arkady Martin, who also has 3 wins and 2 nominations. So in 2020, her book A Memory Called Empire won the Hugo and was nominated for Nebula. And then in 2022, A Desolation Called Peace won the Hugo and Locus and was also nominated for Nebula. Why Nebula never awarded her a win? Who knows? So these 2 books make up the Texacalan duology. It might be Texacalan duology. In the first book, Ambassador Mahit Zamar arrives in the center of the multi-system Texacalani Empire, only to discover that her predecessor, the previous ambassador from their small but fiercely independent mining station, has died. But no one will admit that his death wasn't an accident, or that Mahit might be the next to die, during a time of political instability in the highest echelons of the imperial court. Now, Mahit must discover who is behind the murder, rescue herself, and save her station from Texacalan's unceasing expansion, all while navigating an alien culture that is all too seductive, engaging in intrigues of her own, and hiding a deadly technological secret, one that might spell the end of her station and her way of life, or rescue it from annihilation. Now I'd say, if you're interested in these books, and you're a bit of a collector, do check out the special editions that Broken Binding have produced. Not sponsored, but they do look fantastic. Arkady Martin's latest release is called Rose House, which is a novella that came out in April, so very recently. The Rose House is infused with artificial intelligence in every beam and tile, but when the architect dies, the house is locked up as commanded by his will, and so it has stayed for a year. Only the architect's protege can enter the house once a year to look at the architect's files and talk with the AI. But when this protege was not in the country, the AI reported the presence of a dead body in the house to the authorities. Now the house is shut up and the authorities can't get in. Supposedly, nobody can get in, but someone must have done, as someone has died there, or so the house says, and maybe someone is still there. So if you want something a bit different from the author, maybe try out her latest release, Rose House. And finally, we come on to the best, the number 1 science fiction and fantasy author of the last 5 years, and it is, drumroll please, N.K. Jemisin, with 4 wins and 2 further nominations. So in 2018, N.K. Jemisin won the clean sweep, the Hugo, Nebula and Locus Awards for the 3rd book in her Broken Earth trilogy, The Stone Sky. And that trilogy, I think, is the only trilogy where every book has won the Hugo, which is remarkable. And then in 2021, she won the Locust and was nominated for Hugo and Nebula for The City We Became, which is a new series. But if we look at the Broken Earth trilogy first, as before, I don't want to spoil the series by telling you the synopsis for the 3rd book, but instead I'll tell you the synopsis for the 1st book, and you can see whether you want to read the series or not. The 1st book was called The Fifth Season. This is the way the world ends. Again. 3 terrible things happen in a single day. Essen, a woman living an ordinary life in a small town, comes home to find that her husband has brutally murdered their son and kidnapped their daughter. Meanwhile, mighty Sanze, the world-spanning empire whose innovations have been civilization's bedrock for 1,000 years, collapses as most of its citizens are murdered to serve a madman's vengeance. And worst of all, across the heart of the vast continent known as the Stillness, a great red rift has been torn into the heart of the earth, spewing ash enough to darken the sky for years or centuries. Now Essen must pursue the wreckage of her family through a deadly, dying land. Without sunlight, clean water or arable land, and with limited stockpiles of supplies, there will be war all across the Stillness, a battle royale of nations, not for power or territory, but simply for the basic resources necessary to get through the dark, long night. Essen does not care if the world falls apart around her. She'll break it herself if she must to save her daughter. It's a powerful trilogy about a mother's love for her daughter. We then move on to the other one, which is The City We Became, which is the first of her Great Cities duology, in which 5 New Yorkers must come together in order to defend their city. Every city has a soul. Some are as ancient as myths, and others are as new and destructive as children. New York City, she's got 5. But every city also has a dark side. A roiling, ancient evil stirs beneath the earth, threatening to destroy the city and her 5 protectors, unless they can come together and stop it once and for all. So her latest release is the second book of this duology, called The World We Make. Could that win another Hugo? Would you put it past N.K. Jemisin to win another Hugo? No, you wouldn't. She's an award-winning machine. So that's it. That's the 5 or 6 best science fiction and fantasy authors according to the 3 major writing awards. And I do have a confession. I've only read one book by one of them, and that is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. I've not read any of the works by the other authors, for which I do feel a fair bit of shame, and which does need to be corrected. So I will be making a promise that I will be reading something from all of them soon. In fact, I've already purchased N.K. Jemisin's first book of the 5th season of the Broken Earth trilogy, and that will be the first book I pick up. So, what do you think about that top 5, 6? Do you agree with it? Do you think there's better authors who've been overlooked by these awards? Let me know in the comments. And if you do love these authors, where should I start, and which series do you recommend me starting with? For now, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.